The stars weep tonight, their ancient fires flickering and fading against the encroaching darkness of a dying cosmos. Across the endless gulf of space, a great empire trembles on the edge of oblivion, its vast dominion cracking beneath the weight of ambition, betrayal, and the cold grasp of immortality. From the crumbling spires of Axiom Prime, the once great heart of civilization, comes a whisper, a harbinger of change spun in shadows, a weaving of destinies by a power older than time itself. We truly love and care for you, wherever you are watching from across this boundless universe. Before we begin this tale, tell us, where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it there? Now, take your coffee, settle in, and let us begin a journey into a story woven from the threads of fate, ambition, and the dark shimmer of cosmic deceit. The empire of Axiom Prime was a beacon of order in the tumultuous sea of stars. Stretching across 1,000 systems, its influence was felt like a tidal wave crushing those who dared defy it. Its ruler, Lord Chancellor Velcurin, was a man shrouded in legend and whispered fears. His life spanned centuries, extended by arcane rituals and forbidden technologies, immortality granted not by mercy, but by the relentless hunger for power and control. His face, carved with lines deepened by eons, was both a symbol of endurance and a mask hiding a fractured soul. Velcurin sat upon the throne of the Citadel of Stars, gazing out at the galaxy he had governed for longer than most could remember. Yet despite the Empire's outward strength, the foundations beneath it were crumbling. Not from external threats alone, though the Xenos marauders at the rim, insurgent cults within, and the ever-present distortions of the warp gnawed incessantly, but from betrayal seeping like poison within the very halls of power. His heart bore a heavy burden, an internal storm of conflicting desires. Immortality was his curse as much as his weapon. The endless passage of time had eroded his compassion, replaced by a cold calculation that chilled the blood of even his closest advisors. But beneath that frost lay the faint embers of doubt, a flicker of something lost to the unyielding march of centuries. Humanity. The loneliness of an eternal existence pressed upon him, and with it, the fear that the empire he built might shatter beyond repair. A shadow moved through the halls, an emissary of the oracle of endless change, a mysterious figure who spoke in riddles and promises. The oracle served Tzeentch, the changer of ways, a deity whose name echoed like a forbidden chant through the void. Tzeentch's gifts were of transformation, of secrets whispered on winds of chaos, of destinies rewritten in blood and flame. This force offered salvation wrapped in deceit, a new dawn at the price of surrender to the unknown. Velcurin's mind wrestled with a harrowing choice: to cling to the dying order and watch his empire crumble into dust, or to embrace the mutable chaos that threatened to consume all he had built. To choose was to betray his people, his own ideals, or the fragile hope for a lasting peace. The weight of this internal conflict pressed heavily, as if the stars themselves conspired to watch his every falter. The Citadel's stained glass windows caught the light of distant dying suns, casting fractured colours upon the cold stone floor. They were a reminder. Even the brightest flames succumbed to the inevitable dusk. As the shadows lengthened, Velcurin rose, his gaze fixed beyond the horizon of stars, toward a destiny woven by gods and men alike. The empire teetered on the cusp of ruin and rebirth. The game of fate had begun, and the players, masters of lies, loyalty, and sacrifice, were moving their pieces in a cosmic dance. And in this endless night, only one truth remained certain: change was coming. weight of centuries pressed heavily upon Lord Chancellor Velkarin's shoulders as he moved through the labyrinthine corridors of the Citadel of Stars. Each step echoed against cold stone, a measured rhythm punctuating the silence like the heartbeat of a dying giant. The Empire was vast, its reach sprawling across systems and worlds. Yet within these walls, the fragile veneer of order began to fracture, revealing the churning unrest beneath. Velkarin's thoughts were a tempest of doubt and resolve. The oracle of endless change had offered a path forward, a promise of renewal through allegiance to Tzeentch, the weaver of fate and deceiver of gods. Yet, to accept was to gamble with the very soul of the Empire and his own humanity. The question gnawed at him relentlessly. Could he wield the tides of chaos without being consumed by them? In the great hall, under vaulted ceilings adorned with starscapes, stood Lady Alara Voss, Velkarin's closest confidant and the commander of the Celestial Guard. Her eyes, sharp and unyielding, bore into his as he approached. She was a woman forged in the crucible of war, her loyalty unwavering, but her mind ever questioning. She represented the heart of the Empire's mortal strength, a counterpoint to Velkarin's immortal burden. "Chancellor," she said, voice steady, yet edged with concern. The frontier worlds stir with rebellion. The Xanthar Syndicate grows bolder, and whispers of cultist uprisings spread like wildfire. Velkarin nodded slowly, the lines on his face deepening. The Empire's enemies multiply, but it is the enemy within that truly threatens to unravel us. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a third figure, Kalen Dreist, a scholar of forbidden law and Velkarin's reluctant advisor on matters of the warp. His gaunt face and haunted eyes spoke of nights spent peering into the abyss. He carried a data slate, its surface flickering with arcane symbols and star charts. "My lord," Kalen began, "the oracle's influence spreads through the court like a shadow. Several high-ranking officials have fallen under his sway. Their minds twist in service to Tzeentch's designs." Velkarin's gaze hardened. "Then we are surrounded by traitors cloaked in loyalty." The trio stood in silence, the weight of betrayal pressing down upon them. Velkarin's mind turned inward, grappling with the tension between his duty and the creeping corruption threatening to consume all he cherished. The very immortality that prolonged his reign now isolated him, a king adrift amid shifting sands. That night, alone in his chamber, Velkarin confronted the darkest parts of himself. Immortality has shown him empires rise and fall, friends become foes, and ideals twisted beyond recognition. Yet beneath the cold veneer, a spark of hope remained, a belief that through sacrifice and cunning, the Empire might yet endure. As the twin moons of Axiom Prime cast pale light through stained glass, Velkarin vowed to uncover the traitors and navigate the labyrinth of fate. But deep within, he feared the greatest betrayal would come not from his enemies, but from the choices he was yet to make. The cold breath of dawn seeped through the towering windows of the citadel, casting long shadows across the mosaic floors, fragments of stars forever frozen in time. Outside, the sprawling city of Axiom Prime stirred, unaware of the silent storm gathering within its heart. Lord Chancellor Velkarin stood alone atop the citadel's highest balcony, the weight of immortality pressing upon him like the gravity of a collapsing star. His thoughts lingered on the oracle of endless change and the insidious reach of Tzeentch's influence. The whispers of betrayal had taken root not just in the court, but within the very fabric of his closest circle. Trust had become a brittle thing, shattered beneath the weight of secrets and shifting allegiances. Among those whose loyalty now wavered was Arik Val, Velkarin's once trusted advisor and a man whose brilliance had shaped the Empire's technological ascendancy. In the labyrinth of politics and power, Arik had walked a perilous path, his mind ensnared by the seductive promises of forbidden knowledge. Velkarin's heart ached with a premonition that the man who had once been his steadfast ally might now be his greatest threat. Meanwhile, in the dimly lit chambers beneath the citadel, the oracle's followers convened in secret. Cloaked in shifting shadows, they spoke in cryptic tongues, weaving plans that intertwined with the currents of the warp itself. Their leader, a figure whose face was forever obscured, radiated a presence both magnetic and terrifying, a living embodiment of Tzeentch's capricious will. Back within the citadel, Lady Ilara Voss prepared the Celestial Guard for the unrest spreading like wildfire beyond the city's gleaming walls. Her fierce resolve was tempered by the knowledge that battles would be fought not only on distant battlefields, but within the hearts of men and women sworn to serve. Velkarin summoned his council, a gathering fraught with tension and suspicion. The air was thick with unspoken accusations as alliances shifted like sand. In this crucible of power, every word and glance carried the weight of life and death. As the council debated strategies to quell rebellion and root out traitors, Velkarin wrestled with his own internal conflict. The immortal burden that granted him endless years also cursed him with the endless watch over an empire fracturing under the strain of ambition and deceit. In a moment of solitude, he allowed himself a rare confession. Perhaps the true enemy was not the rising tide of chaos, but the part of himself willing to embrace it for survival. The path ahead was fraught with peril, and the choices he would make now could unravel the very fabric of the galaxy. As the stars dimmed behind gathering clouds, the game of fate accelerated. The threads spun by Tzeentch tightened around the Empire, drawing all into a web from which few would escape unscathed. The citadel's vast halls echoed with muted footsteps, shadows twisting beneath the glow of ancient sigils etched into towering pillars. In this sanctum of power and secrets, Lord Chancellor Velkarin's internal war deepened, a battle between the desire to hold fast to the order he had built and the unsettling lure of the endless change promised by Tzeentch's agents. Time itself seemed to warp within these walls, the eternal ruler caught in a nexus of past failures and looming betrayals. Lady Ilara Voss stood by the panoramic viewport overlooking the city, her gaze steely and unwavering. The fires of rebellion had begun to kindle in the outer sectors, fueled by discontent and whispered promises of freedom from a crumbling regime. Yet her loyalty to Velkarin was unshaken, though even she could not deny the growing shadow that loomed over the Empire's soul. At her side, Kaelin Dreest unrolled a fragile holomap, its surface flickering with unstable warp readings. "The Oracle's cult has infiltrated even the highest ranks," he warned, voice low and strained. "Their rituals bend reality, twisting minds and fates alike. If we do not act swiftly, the Empire will be lost to this insidious contagion." Velkarin's eyes darkened as he absorbed the words. "The price of survival is steep," he murmured, "but to wield chaos is to invite ruin upon oneself. This is the paradox we face, an empire built on order, yet sustained only through the dance with madness." That evening, in the depths of his private chambers, Velkarin confronted Arik Val, once his closest advisor and a mind unmatched in brilliance. Arik now radiated an unsettling aura, shadows seeming to cling to him like a second skin. The confrontation was a silent tempest of glances and veiled threats, the air thick with unspoken accusations. "Why do you consort with the oracle's servants?" Velkarin demanded, voice low but laced with steel. Arik's gaze flickered, a haunted smile curling at his lips. Knowledge is not a gift, but a burden. To deny the truth is to condemn the Empire to decay. The change Tzeentch offers is the only path forward. Betrayal hung between them, like a blade poised to strike. Velkarin saw in Arik the reflection of his own fears, the temptation to sacrifice everything for the illusion of control, the fatal gamble of embracing the very chaos that threatened to consume them. As the night deepened, Velkarin retreated to the ancient chamber of the Loom of Fates, where strands of shimmering energy wove the destinies of countless souls. There, in the flickering light, he pondered the terrible cost of his choices. Immortality had made him witness to endless cycles of rise and ruin, yet never before had the threads of his own fate felt so entangled with darkness. Outside, the stars blinked uncertainly behind gathering storms, the cosmos itself seeming to hold its breath. The Empire stood at a crossroads, a fragile balance between salvation and annihilation. And as the wheels of fate turned inexorably onward, Velkarin's resolve hardened. He would face the shadows within, no matter the price. The distant rumble of unrest grew louder beneath the gilded towers of the citadel, a haunting symphony of rebellion and whispered fears. Across the sprawling expanse of Axiom Prime, fires flickered in the night, flames of insurrection kindled by promises of freedom and the seduction of forbidden truths. Yet within the heart of the Empire, a deeper storm raged, a tempest of loyalty and treachery, ambition and despair. Lord Chancellor Velkarin stood at the precipice of an impossible choice. The path of unwavering order promised the slow decay of his empire, while the twisted road offered by Tzeentch's chaos whispered of rebirth through destruction. The paradox gnawed at his soul. Could one harness the ever-shifting tides of fate without being swallowed whole? Lady Alara Voss remained his steadfast sentinel, her blade a shield against the growing darkness. But even her iron will trembled under the weight of doubt. The Celestial Guard, once unbreakable, faced fractures seeded by fear and suspicion. Trust had become a currency rarer than the stars themselves. In shadowed chambers, Arik Val's transformation deepened. His mind, once a beacon of scientific brilliance, now danced perilously on the edge of madness. Enraptured by the oracle's whispers, he delved into forbidden rites, seeking to bend reality's fabric. His betrayal wasn't born of malice, but of a desperate conviction that only change, however chaotic, could save the dying empire. Kaelin Dreist unearthed fragments of arcane prophecy, tales of a time when empires would fall and gods would weave destinies anew. He warned of the loom of fate's unravelling, threads severed by unseen hands. Yet his counsel often fell on deaf ears, drowned in the cacophony of war drums and political machinations. One night, under the fractured light of dying moons, Velkarin convened a secret council. The chamber pulsed with tension, voices hushed, yet charged with accusation. The oracle's influence was undeniable, but so too was the fragility of their unity. Each word spoken was a step across a minefield of suspicion. In a rare moment of vulnerability, Velkarin shared his torment. Immortality had become a prison, each century a chain tightening around his soul. To watch empires rise and fall was to be cursed with endless loss, the faces of friends turned enemies haunting his dreams. The council fractured, alliances shattered like glass. Some called for immediate purges, others whispered of negotiation with the oracle's faction. Velkarin's heart ached with the burden of command, knowing that any choice would spill blood, either of his enemies or his own people. As the first light of dawn bled into the sky, Velkarin gazed upon the empire he had sworn to protect. The stars above shimmered with cold indifference, silent witnesses to the dance of fate and free will. The empire's fate hung in delicate balance, poised between eternal stasis and transformative chaos. The game had become more than a struggle for power. It was a crucible testing the very soul of a leader, an empire, and a universe poised on the edge of oblivion. Beneath the vaulted ceilings of the citadel, where echoes of ancient oaths lingered like ghostly whispers, the threads of fate twisted ever tighter around Lord Chancellor Velkarin. His once unshakable certainty had given way to a restless tempest within, a maelstrom of hope, despair, and the suffocating weight of immortality. The empire's heartbeat faltered as rebellion simmered in its veins, and the unseen hands of the oracle wove patterns of deception deeper into its core. Lady Alara Voss moved with relentless purpose, rallying the Celestial Guard to quell the fires of insurgency. Her steel-clad presence was a beacon to those still loyal, yet even she felt the icy grip of doubt creeping into her resolve. The lines between friend and foe blurred, and every whispered conversation seemed laced with hidden daggers. Arik Val, now irrevocably entwined with the dark promises of Tzeentch, pushed the boundaries of forbidden science and sorcery. His laboratories, hidden deep within the citadel's underbelly, became crucibles of transformation, where flesh and machine merged in grotesque defiance of natural law. He believed salvation lay in evolution, even as his creations became twisted abominations reflecting his fractured mind. Kaelendrais pored over ancient tomes and shattered prophecies, searching for a thread of hope amid the chaos. His warnings grew more desperate. The loom of fates was unraveling, and with it, the very fabric of reality threatened collapse. But each dire message was met with suspicion or despair, as the empire teetered on the brink of fracture. In a rare council convening beneath flickering hololights, Velkarin revealed the depths of his inner torment. Immortality was a cage forged by time itself. He had become a relic, an eternal witness to the endless cycle of conquest and ruin. He confessed to harboring fears not only for his empire, but for the soul he feared he had already lost. The council's chambers simmered with tension as old alliances shattered and new, uneasy pacts formed. Some whispered of purging the oracle's followers by any means necessary. Others urged cautious diplomacy with the forces of change, desperate to find a path through the storm. Velkarin stood at the crossroads of destiny, the burden of choice heavy upon him. As the twin moons of Axiom Prime cast fractured light upon the citadel's battlements, the first shots of open rebellion rang out across the city. The Empire's fragile peace shattered, plunging the stars into a chaos long feared but now fully realized. Velkarin's eyes, reflecting the burning skyline, held a glimmer of grim determination. The eternal dance of order and chaos had begun anew, and the fate of an empire, and perhaps the galaxy itself, hung in the balance. The skies above Axiom Prime churned with ash and ember, a tempest born of fire and fury. The once pristine citadel, gleaming like a jewel amid the stars, now bore the scars of rebellion, crumbling battlements shattered by pulsefire and the cries of the fallen. The distant thunder of war echoed through the void, a grim symphony to accompany the Empire's unravelling. Lord Chancellor Velkarin stood amid the ruins of his capital, his immortal gaze fixed on the horizon where fleets clashed in the black seas of space. The external battles were fierce, but within him raged a deeper, more insidious war. A conflict between the loyalty he had sworn to uphold and the seductive whisperings of change that Tzeentch wove through every thread of fate. Betrayal had taken root in the hearts of those once closest to him. Arik Val's defection to the Oracle's faction cut deep, a wound that bled doubt into Velkarin's soul. Yet even as his trusted advisor became an agent of chaos, Velkarin could not help but feel a flicker of understanding. Arik sought salvation in transformation, a rebirth born from ruin. Lady Alara Voss, her armor scorched but spirit unbroken, led the Celestial Guard in desperate counterattacks to reclaim lost ground. Her fierce loyalty was a beacon in the encroaching darkness, yet beneath her steely resolve, cracks of uncertainty began to form. The lines between friend and foe blurred as allegiances shifted like shadows in the dying light. Amidst this turmoil, the Oracle's true design revealed itself. Not merely a force of rebellion, but a catalyst for a greater metamorphosis. Secret laboratories hummed with dark energies as Arik's grotesque creations, twisted hybrids of flesh and machine, marched in service to the changeling god. The very fabric of realities seemed to ripple with each unfolding event, the loom of fates fraying at its edges. Velkarin's mind wrestled with impossible choices. Could he hold to the remnants of an empire forged in order, or embrace the chaotic rebirth whispered by Tzeentch's hand? Each decision felt like a thread being severed or rewoven, the weight of immortality a crushing reminder that every act echoed across centuries. As the twin suns dipped below a blood-red horizon, Velkarin gazed upward, eyes reflecting the dying light. The galaxy was poised on a knife's edge, between ruin and renewal, betrayal and loyalty, death and immortality. The eternal game played by gods and mortals alike had reached a perilous turn, and in the shadows, the changeling god smiled, weaving fate's strands with cunning and guile. The storm of war raged unabated across Axiom Prime, its skies rent by firestorms and shrouded in smoke that choked the light of distant stars. The once mighty empire was fracturing, its foundations trembling under the relentless tide of rebellion and treachery. From the shattered halls of the citadel to the blood-soaked battlefields beyond, the echoes of betrayal reverberated like a dirge for a dying age. Lord Chancellor Velkarin moved like a shadow among the ruins, his immortal form a stark contrast to the crumbling world around him. Each victory was Pyrrhic, each decision a step deeper into the labyrinth of fate spun by the changeling god. The burden of centuries weighed upon his soul, a constant reminder that immortality was not salvation, but an unending trial. Lady Alara Voss, scarred but unbroken, marshalled the remnants of the Celestial Guard with fierce determination. Her loyalty to Velkarin remained steadfast, yet even she grappled with the growing realization that the lines between order and chaos had blurred beyond recognition. Trust was a fragile shard in a shattered mirror, reflecting fractured alliances and hidden agendas. Within the shadowed recesses of the citadel's underbelly, Arik Val's laboratories became crucibles of dark creation. His twisted experiments blurred the boundary between flesh and machine, reality and nightmare. Driven by a desperate conviction that transformation was the only path to survival, Arik's creations marched forth as harbingers of a new, terrifying order. Caelandris' warnings grew more urgent as ancient prophecies unfolded with chilling precision. The loom of fates, that cosmic web binding all destinies, frayed with each passing day. Threads snapped, unraveling futures once thought immutable, leaving chaos to seep into the very marrow of existence. In a rare moment of solitude, Velkarin contemplated the ruins from his chamber's shattered window. The stars above, once eternal guides, now flickered uncertainly through thickening clouds. He felt the cruel irony of his immortal burden, an endless witness to the rise and fall of empires, forever cursed to watch as all he loved slipped through his grasp. The oracle's influence tightened like a noose, entwining friends and foes alike in a deadly dance. The choice before Velkarin was stark: cling to a dying order or surrender to the swirling chaos and chance the fate of all he had sworn to protect. As the crimson light of war bled into the night, the Empire held its breath, teetering on the brink of irrevocable change. And beyond the veil of stars, the changeling god wove his inscrutable designs, smiling at the unfolding tapestry of destiny. The horizon burned with the fires of 1,000 worlds aflame, their crimson glow casting long shadows over the fractured empire of Axiom Prime. The relentless siege had worn down the last bastions of resistance, while whispers of revolution echoed through the shattered streets. Yet, the greatest battles were not fought upon these broken lands, but within the shattered hearts and wavering loyalties of those who once pledged eternal allegiance. Lord Chancellor Velkarin's once resolute facade now bore the weight of endless centuries and impossible choices. Immortality, once coveted as a gift from the ancients, had become a relentless torment, a prison where time stretched without mercy, forcing him to witness the slow decay of his empire and the betrayals etched into every alliance. His mind was a battleground, torn between the desperate desire to preserve order and the haunting seduction of Tzeentch's promises of transformation and rebirth. Lady Alara Voss stood at his side, the steel of her armour dulled, but her spirit unbroken. Her fierce loyalty burned like a beacon amidst the encroaching darkness. Yet even she grappled with doubt as old friends turned traitor and old truths dissolved into the shifting sands of fate. She was both shield and sword, fighting not just for survival, but for the hope of redemption in a galaxy slipping into chaos. In the depths below the citadel, Arik Val's monstrous creations marched forward, a testament to his warped genius and madness. Their grotesque forms blended flesh, metal, and sorcery, heralding a new order forged in the crucible of desperation and cosmic ambition. The oracle's influence stretched like a venomous web, ensnaring those who sought power, knowledge, or salvation in its deadly grasp. Kaelin Dreist uncovered fragments of forbidden prophecy, words etched in forgotten tongues that spoke of an empire's fall and a god's cruel game. He warned of the loom of fate's unravelling, the threads of destiny severed by forces both mortal and divine. Yet his words were often met with skepticism or despair, drowned out by the cacophony of war and political strife. As the final battle for the heart of the empire loomed, Velkarin faced a choice that transcended politics and power. The choice between clinging to a legacy doomed to crumble or embracing the chaos that could remake the universe itself. The stars above flickered uncertainly, silent, witnesses to a fate yet unwritten. In the shadows, the changeling god's laughter echoed, an eternal reminder that in the grand game of fate, no soul was beyond his reach, and no empire beyond ruin. The twilight of Axiom Prime bled across the horizon like the final breath of a dying star. The empire, once a beacon of order and strength, now teetered on the precipice of oblivion. The fires of rebellion and war had ravaged its heart, while within its shattered halls, darker forces twisted the very essence of fate. Lord Chancellor Velkarin stood amidst the ruins of his throne room, a solitary figure cloaked in the weight of eternal life and crushing despair. The immortal years had stretched endlessly before him, each century a fresh wound upon his soul. Yet even now, in this darkest hour, the cold whisper of Tzeentch's promise lingered, a siren's call to reshape destiny itself. Beside him, Lady Alara Voss bore the scars of countless battles, her unwavering loyalty a rare light amid encroaching shadows. But beneath her steely resolve, doubt festered like a hidden poison. The line between savior and destroyer blurred as allies became enemies, and enemies whispered of salvation through chaos. Arik Val's descent into madness was now complete. His laboratories birthed abominations that defied nature and sanity, monstrous hybrids forged in the crucible of forbidden science and warp sorcery. These creations marched under the banner of the Oracle, heralding the dawn of a new, terrifying order where flesh, machine, and warp entwined in unholy unity. Kaelin Droist, the last bastion of arcane wisdom, unraveled ancient prophecies with growing desperation. The loom of fates was fraying, its threads torn by unseen hands, unraveling the tapestry of existence. His warnings echoed unanswered through the halls of power, lost amid the cacophony of war and treachery. As the final confrontation approached, Velkarin grappled with a harrowing truth. The price of survival might be the surrender of his very soul. To embrace chaos was to invite destruction, yet to resist was to condemn all he loved to ruin. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath, the cosmos poised on the edge of irrevocable change. In the shadowed depths of the citadel, the oracle's laughter echoed, a chilling reminder that in the game of fate, all were but pawns, and the changer of ways ever watched, weaving destinies with cruel delight. The citadel's fractured halls echoed with the distant rumble of war, a grim reminder that the Empire's heart was slowly being consumed by fire and betrayal. The once mighty throne room, now scarred and shattered, stood as a testament to the relentless siege tearing at Axiom Prime's soul. Amid the ruins, Lord Chancellor Velkarin faced the inexorable tide of fate with a weary gaze, his immortal burden heavier than ever. His mind was a battlefield, torn between the unyielding desire to preserve the Empire and the insidious pull of Tzeentch's promises. Immortality, once a blessing, now felt like a curse, a prison of endless memories and unending loss. Each ally turned traitor, each victory stained with blood, chipped away at the remnants of his resolve. Lady Alara Voss, battle-worn but unbroken, rallied the remnants of the Celestial Guard with fierce determination. Her loyalty to Velkarin remained unwavering, yet even she struggled against the creeping despair that threatened to consume all hope. The lines between friend and foe blurred as shadows of doubt cast long over the fractured alliances. Deep within the citadel's shadowed depths, Arik Val's monstrous creations prowled, grotesque hybrids forged from flesh, machine, and warp sorcery. His madness, fueled by the Oracle's dark whispers, had become a catalyst for the Empire's unraveling. These abominations marched under the changeling god's banner, heralding an era where the boundaries of reality frayed and bled. Kaelin Droist delved into the fading echoes of ancient prophecy, desperate to find a thread of salvation amid the unraveling loom of fates. His warnings, however, were met with skepticism, or drowned out by the chaos engulfing the Empire. Time itself seemed to bend, and the future grew ever more uncertain. In a rare moment of clarity, Velkarin convened a final council beneath the shattered starscape of the Citadel's observatory. The weight of centuries bore down as he revealed the terrible truth. The Empire's survival demanded sacrifice beyond measure, and the ultimate choice between order and chaos rested on a knife's edge. As the first light of dawn broke through the storm-ravaged skies, Velkarin's gaze turned inward. The immortal had become a relic, trapped in an eternal dance with fate, his soul torn between salvation and damnation. The Empire's fate, and perhaps the fate of the cosmos itself, hung precariously in the balance. The citadel trembled under the weight of inevitability as the final days of the Empire's twilight drew near. Fires burned across the cityscape of Axiom Prime, their glow mingling with the cold light of distant stars that seemed to mourn alongside mortal souls. Within these crumbling walls, Lord Chancellor Velkarin bore the crushing solitude of immortality, an endless witness to the relentless decay of all he had built. His once steely resolve had been battered by years of war, betrayal, and unrelenting doubt. The Oracle's dark web had woven itself into the very fabric of the Empire, twisting minds and severing loyalties. The transformation of Arik Val into the changeling god's instrument of chaos was a wound that festered deep within Velkarin's soul. A man he had trusted now led armies of twisted abominations, each a testament to the devastating cost of ambition and madness. Lady Ilara Voss, her armor etched with the scars of countless battles, stood beside him in the war room. Her unwavering loyalty was a beacon in the gathering storm, yet even she carried the heavy burden of despair. The Celestial Guard, once an unbreakable shield, was fractured by internal strife and the corrosive influence of doubt. Kaelin Drist's urgent research revealed grim revelations. The loom of fate, that ancient and cosmic tapestry binding the destinies of all, was unraveling, threads snapping, futures unspooling into chaos. Each prophecy brought a deeper understanding of the price that must be paid, a sacrifice that could not be undone. In the silence before the final storm, Velkarin faced the terrible truth of his immortal existence. The endless march of time had rendered him a prisoner of his own making, cursed to watch as empires rose and fell like tides upon a barren shore. Yet within that endless cycle, a flicker of defiance burned, a hope that through sacrifice, redemption might yet be found. As the twin moons of Axiom Prime cast pale light over the citadel's battlements, the stage was set for the Empire's last stand. The clash between order and chaos, loyalty and betrayal, destiny and free will, loomed like a gathering tempest. And at its heart stood a man caught between the echoes of eternity and the fleeting hope of salvation. The air in the war room hung thick with tension, a suffocating weight that mirrored the storm raging outside the shattered windows of the citadel. The final hours of the Empire approached like the slow collapse of a dying star, inevitable and devastating. Lord Chancellor Velkarin stood at the center, a solitary figure haunted by centuries of triumph and loss, his immortal gaze piercing through the veil of fate. Betrayal had cut deep, leaving wounds that no armor could shield against. Arik Val, once a brother in arms, now led the Oracle's forces, his mind twisted by the promises of Tzeentch, and his body fused with nightmarish creations that defied the natural order. The clash between former allies was no longer a matter of politics, but of survival and soul. Lady Ilara Voss, her armor battered but spirit unyielding, prepared the Celestial Guard for the final confrontation. Her loyalty was a beacon amidst encroaching darkness, yet even she bore the heavy burden of doubt and sorrow. The battle ahead would test not only her steel, but the fragile threads of trust that still bound the remnants of the Empire. Kaelin Drist's prophecy spoke of sacrifice, of lives given to mend the fraying loom of fates, and of choices that could echo through eternity. yet none could predict the true cost, the price paid in blood and betrayal beneath the cold gaze of the stars. Velkarin's internal conflict reached its zenith. The immortal burden pressed upon him with crushing force. To embrace chaos might offer rebirth, but at the risk of becoming the very monster he sought to destroy. To cling to order could mean watching all he loved burn to ash. The choice was a knife's edge, slicing through hope and despair alike. As the first volleys of the final battle thundered across the war-torn skies, Velkarin made his decision, a sacrifice born of love, regret, and the desperate hope for redemption. The eternal dance of fate twisted anew, threads woven and severed by the hand of a man who had become legend. And in the shadows, the changeling god watched, his smile both cruel and knowing, as destinies converged and empires crumbled beneath the weight of choices made in the dying light. The final storm descended upon Axiom Prime with a fury that shattered worlds and fractured souls. The sky burned with the fire of 1,000 suns, and the cries of the fallen echoed through the shattered streets like the last lament of a dying age. Within the heart of the citadel, Lord Chancellor Velkarin faced the culmination of centuries of struggle. A moment where the fate of an empire, and perhaps the galaxy itself, would be decided. His immortal form stood resolute amidst the chaos, a symbol of endurance in a world unraveling. Yet beneath the steely exterior lay a torrent of emotions: regret, sorrow, and the unbearable weight of sacrifice. The threads of fate had been pulled taut, and the choices made in this crucible would echo through eternity. Lady Alara Voss fought valiantly at his side, her blade carving through the onslaught of abominations born of Arik Val's madness. Her loyalty was unyielding, but even the fiercest warriors could not withstand the tide of chaos forever. Every strike was a testament to the fragile hope that still flickered in the darkness. Arik Val, twisted by the changeling god's corrupt gifts, led the oracle's forces with ruthless precision. His once brilliant mind now a labyrinth of warped ambition and madness, he embodied the very essence of the Empire's decay and the terrifying promise of transformation. The clash between former friends was a brutal dance of destiny and despair. Kaelin Dreist's prophecies reached their crescendo, revealing that the price of salvation was beyond mortal reckoning, a sacrifice that could sever the immortal chains binding Velkarin, freeing his soul but dooming the Empire to oblivion. The loom of fates trembled as the final thread was woven. In the dying light, Velkarin made the ultimate choice. With a voice heavy with sorrow and resolve, he invoked the ancient rites, channeling the last vestiges of order and chaos into a cataclysmic event that would reshape the galaxy. His sacrifice shattered the chains of immortality, releasing a wave of energy that cleansed and destroyed in equal measure. The citadel crumbled, the Empire's heartbeat faltered, and the stars above flickered uncertainly. Yet amidst the ruins, a fragile seed of hope remained, a testament to the cost of ambition, loyalty, and the eternal struggle between change and preservation. And in the void beyond, the changeling god's smile faded, replaced by a silence that spoke of unfinished games and the endless turning of the cosmic wheel. The cosmos held its breath as the remnants of Axiom Prime's shattered empire lay silent beneath a veil of ash and starlight. The great citadel, once a bastion of order and eternal dominion, now crumbled into oblivion, its ruins swallowed by the endless void. In the stillness that followed the cataclysm, only echoes of ancient glory remained, whispers of sacrifice, betrayal, and the tragic cost of immortality. Lord Chancellor Velkarin's immortal form was no more. His soul, once bound by unyielding chains of eternal life, was finally freed through the ultimate sacrifice, a release into the endless tapestry of fate he had both served and defied. The curse of witnessing endless cycles of rise and ruin had ended, leaving behind a legacy carved in sorrow and bittersweet hope. Lady Alara Voss stood among the ruins, her armor battered, her eyes reflecting the pale light of distant stars. She was a living testament to resilience, a bearer of the memory of those lost, and the dreams that survived the Empire's fall. The weight of loyalty and love pressed heavily upon her, yet within her burned a spark of quiet defiance, a promise that even in death, the spirit of Axiom Prime would endure. Cailan Dreist, the last chronicler of fading prophecies, watched the loom of fates ripple and settle. The threads once tangled in chaos now lay still, their patterns forever altered by choices made in fire and shadow. The future remained uncertain, a fragile bloom amid the ashes of devastation. Far beyond the shattered worlds, in the silent void where gods play their endless games, the changeling god Tzeentch's laughter echoed faintly, less triumphant, more contemplative. The game was not over. Destinies were still being woven, and the eternal dance of change and permanence would continue until the stars themselves grew cold. In the quiet aftermath, the galaxy mourned and remembered. Empires fall, heroes are lost, and time marches ever onward. But from the ashes of ruin, new legends will rise. The story of Velkarin and Axiom Prime became a cautionary tale etched into the stars, a reflection on ambition, sacrifice, and the eternal cost of power. And as the void stretched infinite and dark, a single dying star pulsed weakly, a symbol of endings, beginnings, and the endless cycle of fate. The end.